going on, guys? I'm here in Hanover, Germany for the burial site of King George I of Great Britain, who ruled from 1714 to 1727. Wait a minute. You're probably wondering why the heck is a British monarch buried in Germany? Well, this is the Welfenmausoleum, and this also houses many of the royals of the Kingdom of Hanover, which George I was part of. And we're going to learn how he ended up becoming the King of England. And he's the last British monarch to be buried outside of the UK. And so we're going to learn all about that in this video. Then we're going to be screaming his name for smash, obviously. So, without further ado, let's go. So George I was born in June of 1660 in Osnabrück, Germany. Now, to understand how he ended up inheriting the English throne, we need to go back a little bit. Now, the 17th century in Europe was completely defined by the wars between the Catholics and Protestants. A lot of it was. And that was capitalized in the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648. However, what happens is, in the 1680s, something in England happens known as the Glorious Revolution, something in England and Scotland. Basically, their king of the time, from the House of Stuart, James II and VII. It's called James II and VII. He's James II in England, it's the VII of Scotland. He ends up converting to Catholicism, and a lot of people in England want a Protestant king. They don't want a Catholic monarchy for some reason. It's just not what they want. And so what happens is James II only has daughters. So his daughters are Protestants, so they weren't too worried about it. Eventually, he marries a second time after his wife dies to a Catholic woman. He converts to Catholicism and has a son who is going to be raised Catholic. And so everyone in England is scared that the monarchy is going to go back to being Catholic the way it was back in the 1500s. And so what happens from there is they overthrow James II. It's called the Glorious Revolution. No blood was shed. James just fled to France, where he lived the rest of his life. His daughter ends up becoming Queen Mary II. And then she dies without kids, and her husband William from the Netherlands, they both die without kids. They reign together. And then we get Queen Anne, her sister, who has 10 children, and the one that lives the longest is her son, William, who dies at 11 years old. And thus there's about to be a succession crisis in England because everyone who is in line to the throne is Catholic. So in 1701, they signed the Succession Act of 1701, basically barring all Catholics from inheriting the throne of England. And the next in line to the throne that's not Catholic is George I's mother, Sophia of the Palatinate, or Sophia of Hanover. She married the first Prince Elector of Hanover in Germany. But she actually ended up dying a little bit before Queen Anne did in 1714. And so her son, George, ends up becoming King of Britain upon the death of Queen Anne in 1714. He's 54 years old, and he's 52nd in line to the throne when he comes. He's 54 years old at the time. He doesn't speak a word of English, and he never bothered to learn English his entire reign in Britain. And so what happens is he ends up spending most of his time in Germany, in the Electorate of Hanover. He spends most of his time there, and that's how we get the British House of Hanover from him. A lot changes in Britain when George I takes the throne. First of all, in 1715, he has to fight off a Jacobite rebellion, which the Jacobites, known as the Old Pretender, the former son of King James II, try to come back and take the throne. But George I is able to put down that rebellion. He also is a big patron of the arts. He founds a huge music academy in the UK and also brings Baroque era music to London and also the rest of England and the United Kingdom and Great Britain. It wasn't the UK yet, Britain, including Georg Friedrich Handel, who wrote the Judas Maccabeus and the Hallelujah Chorus, very famous. He brought all that stuff to London. So he did a lot of that stuff. But he didn't spend much time in Britain during his reign. He was mostly in Germany. And he ended up dying in Germany, in Osnabrück. That's why he's buried here today. And so then his son ends up becoming George II, and the rest of the monarchs continue to rule in Britain, as well as having authority in Hanover as well. He has dual positions. He's the Elector of Hanover and also the King of England, which is crazy. And it's weird having the King of England that doesn't even speak English. King of England spoke German. So it was really interesting. Eventually, though, we get his son, George II, and then his great-grandson, George III, which he's known as Mad King George. He's the one that was the king during the American Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. He's the Elector of Hanover. His two sons become George IV and William IV. After William IV's death, the royal family in Britain and Hanover split, because Hanover is a German state, and so at this point it has been made a kingdom. After the Napoleonic Wars, Hanover becomes the Kingdom of Hanover, and so George III becomes the first King of Hanover. He's King of Hanover and King of Britain at the same time. And so after William IV, his son, dies, his niece, Queen Victoria, becomes Queen of Britain. However, German law does not allow for females to inherit the throne. And so the fifth son of George III becomes the King of Hanover, Ernest Augustus, and he's buried here as well. He rules from 1837 to 1851 in Hanover, and his son, the blind George V, who is a memorial to here, he becomes the last king of Hanover, ruling until 1866, when Hanover is annexed by Prussia during the Austro-Prussian War, which eventually formed the North German Confederation in 1866. So the Kingdom of Hanover didn't last too long, and actually right here on this grounds here used to be a palace. It was destroyed during World War II because Hanover was bombed to rubble. 80% of the city was destroyed during 88 bombing campaigns during World War II. And so George I's body had to be moved here again. So let's go ahead and scream his name for Smash. King George I for Smash! Let's get a closer look. They have some names on the front here. They have some names of the people on the front. So here are all of the individual figures buried in this mausoleum. The ones that are at least notable. I think one of Queen Anne's, or one of William IV's infant children's buried in here, and a few others. So it's in German, so I can't speak German, but I know some of these people. So we have Johann Friedrich here, a Hanoverian noble, 1625 to 1679. Then we got Ernst August, 1629 to 1698. That was George I's father. He was the first one to be chosen as the Elector of Hanover. Hanover was made an electorate during his reign. However, he was not actually able to claim that, unfortunately. And then we got Sophie, who is George I's mother, and she is the one that was originally supposed to inherit the throne after Queen Anne, but she died in 1714. She was born in 1630. Then we got George I, who is King of Great Britain. He died in 1727. He was born in 1660. Osnabrück. And then we got Ernst August, King of Hanover, from 1771 to 1851 is when he lived. And then we got Friedrich, who was the queen, who lived from 1778 to 1841. So this is the Welfenmausoleum. We can't go inside. Apparently some people were misbehaving in here. And that's why we're not allowed to go inside. But that's what happened there. So that is the burial site of King George I of the United Kingdom in... I need to stop saying the United Kingdom. It wasn't the United Kingdom yet. And with that... Oh, this is actually the memorial to George V, the last king of Hanover. Right here. Georg V. So with that, I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Wah!